Beautiful, isn't it? So let's see how this is exactly broken down into content. As mentioned, we have the fundamentals, then the setup, the leading, the analysis, and the building relationships, which are aligned with the CM job description. And here is now an overview of which e-learnings fit into which category. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the actual process in WMS that you would use to take your trainee through the GDQ. Now, we've already mentioned a first introduction into what is the role. You can see here this is the very first module. The reason why we put it right up here is that some people might just want to familiarize themselves with the role, the purpose, the content before making a decision if they want to apply for it. So, for example, especially internal people. And then you can see here it goes into the formal application process, including the assessment center, the interview process, etc. So, and then once the assessment is passed, it would then go to a decision box here, induction and setup required. So that's for new people. Okay, so people who don't come from inside the AMS, they would have to be set up as new employees, and they would also need an induction into the business first of all, and also the calling system, the two calling systems which we have here. And you can see here the setup, the new employee is also a sub process, so that should go through to the right people. And so the moment your employee starts on their first day, this should already be set up. So then you can see here, this is where the actual GDQ then starts, apart from that very first module here. So this is an e-learning on what to expect from a trainee point of view throughout the GDQ, and also it will cover the SOP card. And from here, you can see that it goes here into live work and shadowing. And those are the live work that we're going to cover in a moment, what they need to do. And also we're going to start with our first learning block, which are the fundamentals. Now we will look into the exact content of each of the blocks here in detail. So once we've done our fundamentals, it then breaks out into our 4 key accountabilities, which we have defined in the job description for a CM, which is plan and execute a high quality setup, professionally lead the project to success, provide meaningful analysis and useful management information, and build strong relationships. So that comes after the fundamentals. Then it goes at the end, it goes into a weekly call assessment here. So right at the end, we've decided we're going to put the weekly call assessment. We've got 5 of them, just to be absolutely sure, because we decided that the weekly call really combines all kinds of knowledge from all kinds of modules. So this is basically the highlight of the GDQ. Once your trainee has passed the fundamentals, the 4 blocks here, and the weekly call assessment, it then goes here into Inferno Week. And we've already mentioned that this is an intensified set of exercises and assessments that the trainee then needs to pass. Then once we're here, your work as a trainer comes to an end, because then we have here that they are appointed as a probationary CM, and they get a GDQ certificate to prove they have passed the GDQ. And then down here we've got a few development courses. They need to pass some of the SOP checks. We need to decide whether they're TRM, etc. So this is then all a process here that will happen after the actual GDQ, to then at the end formally appoint them as a CM, and that will also be then combined with a pay review. So coming back to live work, so if we click in here, so what we have here is first of all the management meeting that they need to shadow, and they also need to run their first management meeting. So that's something that they can organize completely independently. They've got loads of people who are trained and experienced in it, so they just have to take the initiative, hook up with the experienced team, and then shadow and then take on their first meeting. The same applies to the sales system. Sales system checks here, same thing. So that is completely independently. Confirm that you've shadowed this 3 times and confirm the date that you ran the sales system checks. Okay, and then also they need to attach the evidence here. So then we have the billable hours report. And so here they need to do the same as for the sales system checks. They need to run the billable hours report. Now let's just see what the inside of these sub-processes look like. They will all be very similar or the same. So if we just look at one, you should get a good idea of how this whole process works. Now bear in mind that you don't have to know this whole process off by heart. The process and the automation behind it will guide you through the individual steps. This is really just for you as an overview so that you kind of know what to expect. So this, as we can see, is a sub-process, and if we click in here, this is just for the setup, so setting up the campaigns, so planning and executing a high-quality setup, which is the first accountability for a CM. And then you can see here we've got loads of modules here. So if we use the initial data check here as an example, that breaks down into work items for your trainee and for yourself as the trainer, and they will guide you through exactly what you need to do. So your trainee would start with the e-learning, and they would watch it and take the test, which then comes through to you and you have to mark. And then in this case for the initial data check we have live assessments as well. So that means that we will give them a task and they would then have to execute. They send the task back to you and you would then have to score them. And this is an example what one of the work items would look like. So this is the first assessment for the initial data check. So you would put in the name and the date of the assessment. This here is the brief for the CM. So this is what you would tell your CM to brief them on the task. And then down here we also have a trainer brief. Now that means those are the explanations that you need to brief your CM properly, to get familiar with the files in this case that we've provided, etc. So here, for example, we've said once you get this back, check that all information has been populated and all figures match. The pivot tables, we're talking about initial data check. If the trainee asks you questions about the data, give them the required information as the so-called data owner. Assess the reasons given by the trainee if they are valid and if their decision to go ahead or push back is okay. So this here for you under trainer brief is a little bit of a guidance what to look out for in when you brief your trainee, but also when you assess them. Then what you can also see here is your data files. And we have, for this case, we have 3 data files, so 3 different assessments. And for you as a trainer, we've also given you obviously a little bit of a heads up, and we've told you what we would expect. Okay, so data file 1 is this file is good to be loaded. Data file 2 is also good to be loaded, and data file 3 we've built in a little pitfall. This should trigger at least feedback to the client, if not a pushback. Okay, and that's because of missing telephone numbers and missing company names. This file is not okay for loading. Okay, so that's what we would expect. And then when you get your file back from your trainee, you would then assess them. As mentioned, our assessments will have little on-screen recordings, extra on-screen recordings with some explanations on how to score them. We go through the scoring lists where we have some scoring criteria and explain to you exactly what you need to look out for. Okay, so now we know how to run the training and the assessments. Now comes the important part, the scoring and the marking. Some more good news, surprise, WMS will guide you again all the way. For the test at the end of the e-learning, you will see if the answer is correct or not. So it is literally just a quick matching exercise. For e-learning tests to pass, we need 80%. As mentioned, please review the wrong answers with your trainee. For the assessments, we have prepared comprehensive marking lists which outline what exactly we expect to see for each of the exercises. You can then score them 0, which means not demonstrated, a 1 if you feel that it was okay but it still needs some improvement, or a 2, and which means yes, they have demonstrated. Here we are also looking at an 80% pass rate. For Inferno Week, this should be really 90%. And while numbers and percentage are good, please always apply a bit of common sense. If your trainee gets to 81% in an assessment but has shown some clear gaps in the demo, don't sign them off. Sign off means that they can execute the task independently and also to quality. So with no help and with a top quality outcome. If your gut instinct tells you that they are not quite there yet, explain it to them and let them repeat the exercise after some feedback from you to ensure that they really know what they're doing. And I always say signing off for progress sake is tempting but not recommended. And here's what it looks like in WMS. And here is a really quick overview of what the assessments and the marking, what it would look like in WMS. You can see here they would normally come in as either assessment or mark test. So at the moment they're still named slightly differently. So watch out for anything that is assessment, mark test or marking. So your work item would be down here, and I've grouped them here by work item name. And then here it says that I need to mark this particular e-learning test. This one. So I open my work item. And then you can see here, you can see it's Catherine, and then I will be marking it. And then you can see here, question, this is the answer, and it already tells you whether it's correct or wrong. So all you need to do is quickly check how many they've got wrong, figure out a percentage, and then click on here, have they passed, have they failed, and then also put the score in here, and then you complete as usual. Okay, so you can see here we've got one wrong answer, and you know that would be a pass. So then we have the assessments. So you can see here this is how they would come through. So we're just going to pick a random one here. Let me take this one. So this one is telling you this trainee has completed the e-learning, they've passed the test, and they now want to be assessed. So again, for the assessment you would open this work item. There we go. And then here we've already mentioned that you've got your brief, you've got your trainer notes, etc. So, and you've also got the scoring system here. And for each of the assessments you would also have a quick on-screen recording that explains you exactly how to run this particular assessment. So this is just going to be a brief overview for you here. You can see here is the question, and then here you can put in not demonstrated, needs improvement, or demonstrated. Okay, so it will guide you exactly through the assessment. So did they ask about the project type, the target, the client reasons. Okay, this is all about taking a brief, the initial brief from the AM of the client when we get a new campaign in. So this is what we want to see. You can see that it's quite a lot that we want to see. Okay, so it's all about, did they check the nurture scenarios, did they check that regarding the UDQs or profiling questions. And you know, we've already mentioned that previously. Make sure that you really familiarize yourself with those scorings here and those scoring areas before you go into the assessment. It is relatively difficult if you go into the assessment with your trainee and this is the first time that you see this check sheet, okay, because you really kind of know what you need to ask. And then down here at the bottom, please make sure that you do leave a feedback for your trainee. So don't only give them these scorings here, the answers, or your scoring here, but also give them some valuable feedback. Okay, so what did they do well? Where do you see the room for improvement? Especially during the main GDQ, where they still have time to improve and refine their skills. And then at the end, you just enter your score here. So a lot of input here around this CM-GDQ. We have been working with this for a while, and we didn't want you to leave without some words of motherly and fatherly wisdom from some GDQ experienced trainers. Enjoy. The first one, and you might find that surprising, make it clear that GDQ is not some university-style course, learn, revise, pass, exam, forget. Quite a few trainees, which I've trained over the past few years, do have this attitude towards learning, so be mindful. Have a little pep talk with them at the beginning of the training and make it clear that they actually have to remember stuff. And remembering is not your job. Also make that really clear. Your job is to teach, to explain, to assess. Their job is to remember. Also, remind your trainee that it is important to take notes, to revise, to practice independently, and to ask as many questions as they need to understand. Watching a video once and then stumbling into the assessment will not create the kind of knowledge we need. Also very important, the trainee really needs to fully understand the task we train them for. Once you sign them off, we've mentioned it, they are on their own. So resist the urge to sign the trainee off only to show progress. Oh, that appraisal is looming already. If you have doubts, don't sign them off and offer them more training instead. Not every trainee will develop at the same speed. That's life. We just have to adapt. To be successful as a trainer, there's one thing that is vital. Be sure to be fully up to speed yourself. Sounds self-explanatory, but with the amount of areas we train on and the breadth of knowledge a CM needs to have, it is extensive knowledge we are asking for. So make sure that you know your systems, any changes or updates, process changes, and most importantly, our EIMS best practice and what we expect. So if I asked you today what the standard naming convention for a campaign training document is, would you give me the correct answer? Think about it. This kind of leads us to the next bit of wisdom. Prepare for your sessions. Be clear about the outcome, be clear about the content of the module, the expected best practice, and the expected skill the trainee is to demonstrate. If necessary, watch the video yourself, or if you don't want to watch the whole video, refer to the PowerPoint. They are always available to you. If there is a life assessment, please familiarize yourself with the assessment criteria. Some checklists, we mentioned it earlier, are quite long and you have to assess, listen, ask questions and score at the same time. Sometimes all of it while being a person in a role play. So preparation is key. Know what you're doing. Also quite important, anticipate what potential stumbling blocks you might have to overcome and how you want to overcome them. With a bit of experience, especially in the role itself, you should be able to anticipate where your trainee might struggle. You can then come up with ideas how to fix it. Training is great, but every good trainer needs to also train by pulling, not only by pushing. This means for you, lead by example. And that means best practice, best practice, best practice. Show them how you stick to the rules on your accounts and teach them our best practice. They will learn early enough how to break them. Equally important, and we've already touched on it, do not cancel the training slots you have agreed because your client has just asked you to run this really urgent report for them. You are the senior, you can manage expectations, and training is training and non-movable. Set the expectations with your client or your AM and be there for your trainee. Lead by example. Which brings us to Inferno Week. Now, while still in the main GDQ process, you might find yourself being maybe a little bit more lenient at times, helping your trainee a little through the assessments. This all comes to a very sudden end in Inferno Week. Inferno Week means testing your trainee under exam conditions. And at this stage, they must be able to deliver a quality job without any help from you. So if that custom reporting exercise was below standard, make them do it again, and again, and again if necessary. Remember, exam conditions. And finally, probably one of the most important pieces of advice, fight for your right to train. Be firm if account managers, clients, or any other people try to distract you or your trainee from learning and training. And trust me, they will be numerous. There's always an urgent report to run, there's always an urgent data set to load, there's always a system to fix or a QBR to prepare. Okay, so agree with the AM and the rest of the account team that there are no exceptions. Training time is the same as a weekly call or a QBR. It has to happen, it's non-negotiable. You might find that you have to put your foot down sometimes. Do this as many times as it takes for your training to happen regularly. And we've come to the end of a long module. I hope you now have a good idea of how to work with the CMGDQ. Enjoy the test.